in your opinion, is this current Eagles roster top 10 in the NFL? And I'll jump in. Yes, I do think they're a top 10 roster. I think there's a reason why they are top 10 in Super Bowl odds right now. And it's not because of Nick Sirianni. Like it's because of the roster, right? I mean, Nick probably factors into it, but when Bo and I did the skill position rankings, we had the Eagles high up on the list. If you do a quarterback ranking, there's going to be a lot of those in the coming days and weeks. Jalen Hurts is going to be in the top half of the league.
Absolutely.
There are questions, obviously, on the defensive side of the ball, but if you did an offensive line, if you did an offensive line ranking, Eagles would be top 10 in the league. I think that, and I've said this all along, and this kind of is one of the notes for this season, is that if the Eagles struggle, Jeffrey Lurie is not going to hold the roster against Howie Roseman. It's going to be on Nick Sirianni. And so I think that from the Eagles' perspective, they absolutely have a Super Bowl winning roster, or a Super Bowl caliber roster.
Well, I think it's pretty clearly a top 10 roster, Zach. And you know why? I Googled roster rankings, and 4 different publications ranked the Eagles in the top 10.
I think you know it's true.
In different places. Yeah. So I think one of the things was looking back to last year, though. I think most people heading into last season thought, okay, this is a top, maybe the best roster in the league. Like, I don't think many people had them lower than like a top 3, top 4 roster. And the one thing I would say is that we learned during the season the Eagles did not have the best roster in the league. And sometimes at around this point of the season, those rankings might over-index a little bit on past performance, where I think the issue last year is that you looked at the secondary and you saw Darius Slay and James Bradbury both coming off amazing years, but kind of a weaker crop of players behind them, and the fact that they were both older players. And one of them, in Bradbury, completely fell off a cliff. I think the good news is this year, when you look at the secondary, and this gets to the discussion we had at the top of the pod, is that like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell and Keely Ringo, like not only do they have a chance to be good, but they have a chance to be good for a long time. They have a chance to be ascending players, but they probably don't get the same credit in those rankings because we haven't seen them do it that often.
Sure.
Just a little bit of Keely Ringo is all we've had from those 3 players, and even Isaiah Rodgers as well. Like that was a couple of years ago. Let's see how he looks when the games actually start. So I think when you look at the Eagles roster, what do you think, though, when I compare it to last season? Let's say something goes like wrong, though. What is the position group you think that if it turns out, man, this isn't a top 10 roster, what is the group that kind of falls apart and causes that to be the case? Because I would argue it was the secondary.
Yeah, good question. I would say the lines of scrimmage on both sides. Yeah, I think that the Eagles skill position players are outstanding. I think they've done work on their secondary. They lost a Hall of Fame center. And they lost a franchise Hall of Famer at defensive tackle, right? And I think that even when the Eagles have had, like the 2021 roster was not especially good at skill spots, was not especially good in the secondary, but they were really good in the trenches. And when you're good in the trenches, you have a chance to win. And I think that's proven that time and time again. And the Eagles have questions at right guard, right? If Lane Johnson goes down, how's Mekhi Becton as your top right tackle? Cam Jurgens, even though he's a natural center, there's a question there, right? And then you go to the other side of the ball. The Eagles lost their best pass rusher. They lost I don't want to say their best interior player last year. I thought Jalen Carter was really good, but Fletcher Cox played at a high level. Did they adequately replace Hassan Reddick? Did they adequately replace Fletcher Cox, right? I think that the big question for the Eagles this year is the line of scrimmage.
I think it's the D-line. Yeah, you just wonder, especially if Jalen Carter misses any amount of time, like where are they getting their pass rush from? And I think the answer better be, it better be Bryce Huff. But I also, like you mentioned Nolan Smith earlier, it feels like we're not talking about him at all, and hopefully he can rebound from a very quiet first season.
We all silly like the mayor.